Let's take a listen at this video from Sami Hamdi, and then I'll be making some comments. So, Sami Hamdi, let's listen.
I've come across a number of arguments. Let's place it under the conspiracy bucket for now, but a number of arguments that suggest that what has developed here is very much in line with American foreign policy. So I'm going to take each and every single one of these arguments one by one. I mean, the first thing I've heard is that if Turkey is the brains behind this, okay, you've suggested that it's not quite the brains behind it, but it has the greatest leverage at the moment over the new government. But if Turkey has this leverage, and it's a bit ridiculous to say this, but Turkey is a NATO member. And so the argument goes that as a NATO member, Turkey is very much under American control. And so America is controlling this revolution via Turkey and the effective control it has over the new government. How would you answer that?
I think that many people ascribe an omnipotence to the US that belongs solely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone.
Yeah.
I think that they apply the attributes of Allah to America. Allah is all-seeing, America is all-seeing. Allah is the best of planners. His plan is always successful. America's plan is always successful. Okay. Allah is the one who gives rulership. America is the one that delivers people to power. And Allah is the one who takes rulership. They say America is the one who takes it. قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِ الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ. Allah, you give power to whom you will and take it from whom you will. They have substituted Allah for America, and they have found a perfect fit. It is impossible in their minds that Erdogan might have some agency to act outside of American influence and perhaps even frustrate the Americans to such an extent that the Americans might actually have wanted Erdogan to be toppled in the attempted coup in 2016, that the Americans might have actually wanted Kılıçdaroğlu to beat Erdogan in the elections and they didn't want Erdogan to win, that Biden, when he came to power or during the elections, when he came in, he made that famous statement, we need to work with the opposition to remove Erdogan. And then when the journalist went, he's talking about a NATO ally, he went peacefully, democratically, that when you've got all these Americans threatening Erdogan because of his unilateral actions, when he goes and buys S-400s from the Russians, and when he goes and this against US interests in the Mediterranean, in Libya, when they're not happy at him intervening, when John Bolton gave the green light to Haftar to go and take Tripoli, Erdogan goes in to stop Haftar taking Tripoli. I think that it's a very simplistic black and white approach.
Okay, so first thing first that I want to unpack. Number one is it is true. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they are brainwashed, especially those who are following the Western media news every day. They are now embedded with this kind of notion, with this kind of belief that somehow US is omnipotent. They cannot be defeated. Everything that is happening today in our world, US is behind it and they're controlling it. They have the strings, they're pulling on the strings, and they are putting people in place and they're removing people whom they do not like. This is so true. And this is the result of when you are getting brainwashed by the Western media narratives, the so-called analysts, the so-called commentators, the so-called military generals. They always appear on Fox News, CNN, BBC, all this fake news to teach you, to give you that healthy dose. For them it's a healthy dose, but for you it's a poison that US, American soldier, American government, United States, the European countries, NATO, they're so powerful that nothing is happening without their permission. And so when Brother Sami Hamdi, he said that they now attribute to United States what they attribute to God the Almighty. It is so true. Unfortunate, but it is happening. Number two, he also breaks down as to how Turkey, Erdogan, went against US's interests on so many occasions, which is true. But at the same time, I think that a lot of people are very, very still suspicious about Turkish involvement with NATO. Their main, I would say, argument about Turkey in modern time is that why they are still then part of NATO. If they are against US, if they are for the Muslims, if they are Muslim themselves, and they want to protect or save the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine, then why are they still with NATO? NATO is an evil force. Look what they're doing in Russia. Look how they are spreading their colonial projects and their ambitions and desires, helping Israel become greater Israel and things like that. Why then Turkey is still with NATO? So that is something that is causing a lot of people to accuse Turkey of a hypocrite, playing on the both sides, and therefore losing credibility at the same time. Now let's listen what he has to say and how he answers that question.
Erdogan is a tool for the Americans. I think he's a frustration for the Americans. I think where the reason the argument has gained traction is because of Erdogan's conduct on Gaza, whereby 40% or so, according to reports, of oil, Israel's oil, comes from Azerbaijan through the Ceyhan pipeline through Turkey. Erdogan could turn it off, but he chooses not to, because he's worried about the backlash that the Americans will give him, and also the potential that the Turks will topple him as a result of the backlash. By that, what I mean is American sanctions leads to a worsening economy. The Turks won't blame the Americans for the worsening economy of the sanctions. They will blame Erdogan for being, in their words, stupid enough to switch off the oil. And he's an idiot. He shouldn't have done it, even if it's for sake of Palestine, because now we're hungry. We can't go and eat in Taksim Square. We're going to topple Erdogan and we're going to go and give to Kilish Darlo. Erdogan says this isn't worth I'm not making excuse. I'm saying his calculation.
Okay, so again, something very similar to what Putin had been doing with European countries. Remember, countries like Germany, France, all of these European countries, and on top of all of this is United States, put sanction on Russia, and they wanted to destroy Russian economy. They wanted to destroy, annihilate completely, because that was one of the ways they could stop Russia continuing its war of attrition against Ukraine. Nevertheless, Putin, he was always supplying gas to these same European countries in exchange of money. Obviously, he had to support his economy, but at the same time, he also knew that this revenue by supplying energy sources, oil and gas, to these European countries who are not only attacking Russia now. We know that UK and US, they're supplying ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine to launch attack on Russia in of itself. They're also now becoming part of the war, and they're attacking, and so they're allowing US bases, air defense system, to be installed in countries like Poland, in Sweden, and many other countries in the European countries, Scandinavian, the Baltic nations. They're all taking help with and working with the United States to secure their airspace from Russia's fighter jets and their missiles. So in other words, they are directly involved with Russia in a war. Nevertheless, we see Russia, Putin, he's still keeping that gas and oil supply to Europe up until, obviously, I think yesterday they switched it off, because Ukraine said, we are not going to allow you to do so because the agreement has expired with Russia for Ukraine to allow those gas to be supplied using Ukrainian territory. Ukraine said the agreement is over, and they're going to allow that. The point here is that I believe that when a country goes to war, it has to always make sure that its economy is strong. The reason we today see United States imposing sanctions on so many countries, and so many countries they're terrified of US today, it's not just because of the weapon they have, but also because of those dollar power. And therefore, it is important for any country, if they want to maintain a upper hand in any situation, or in situation of war or situation of peace, they always have to make sure that their economy is up and running and it is strong. The reason today Russia is continuing this war against Ukraine is because of strong ruble, strong Russian currency. And so when we talk about Erdogan not turning or switching that gas off that was going to Israel, we have to understand these leaders' mindset, how they see things. But nevertheless, I would still say that I will be on the point of view that Erdogan should have threatened at least that I will turn that gas off to you, Israel, that oil going through Azerbaijan, if you don't stop this genocide. He could have leveraged that a little bit, just like he's leveraging his NATO status. He could have said to Israel, if you don't stop this genocide, one of the ways I'm going to be reacting is by turning that gas off, going to your country. He could have said that, but he did not say a single thing about this. And therefore, quite understandably, so many Turks, they stood against this decision of Erdogan supplying gas and oil to Israel. And they said, how could you do that? On top of this, to make things even worse for Erdogan himself, he talks too much all the time. He's like, the people, the fighters in Gaza, they're not terrorists, they're mujahideen, they're fighting for Islam. And he gave a statement in the parliament quoting verses from the Quran, things like that. So you either do something and then talk, or you don't talk at all if you're not doing anything. But for Erdogan, this is why a lot of people, they don't really like him at all.
The reason the argument gains traction is because Erdogan perhaps has insisted on maintaining good ties with the Israelis even as the Gaza genocide takes place. That Erdogan has not deployed the power at his disposal. He continued trading with the Israelis. When it got leaked, he continued trading secretly with the Israelis. When that got leaked, he announced a ban, but not a complete ban, and there were all these loopholes and the like and whatnot. I understand that, but I think that his approach to Israel is different from his approach to Syria. His approach for Israel, he sees certain doom. I take any serious step against the Israelis, I am done for. It won't be an invasion of American troops. They will get the Turks to turn upon me. That's why I always have the argument. The reason Erdogan feels limited on Gaza is not necessarily because of the Americans, but because he doesn't believe the Turkish population will have his back when the going gets tough because he stood up for Palestine. It's one of those central issues of the social consensus. But in any case, I think that the idea that Erdogan is somehow a tool of NATO or the like, I think that when you look at what's happening in Syria, when you look at the fact that Israel went and bombed all the military installations immediately, suggesting that Israel was comfortable with the state of the Syrian army under Bashar al-Assad. They had no fear of the Syrian army when Bashar al-Assad was in power, but they do have a fear when Turkey's allies are in Damascus and they might be in charge of the military force. Therefore, we need to destroy the military capabilities because Assad, we knew, would never use them. Turkey and their allies, they might use them. And that's why I think it's very poignant. Erdogan, after Damascus fell, stood up in parliament and started reciting the ayah, Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina, starting bringing all this religious rhetoric. Bahjali, his nationalist ally in government, coming out and saying Jerusalem is coming soon. We are putting this route, the announcement of the Hijaz Railway from Istanbul to Damascus. I think that Erdogan is a master of operating within limited frameworks. He is a member of NATO, but he uses that to his advantage. When American public no longer has an appetite for war and therefore is demanding its government to bring the troops home, Erdogan comes out and says, I'm a NATO ally, let me put Turkish troops there. And I think if you were to compare between US troops and Turkish troops, which would the Syrians prefer? If they had to choose, I know Syrians would prefer to have Syrian troops. Which would they prefer? Are you telling me that the Turkish troop and the US troop are equivalent? I admit UAE troop and American troop are the same, I agree. But would you say that the Turkish troop and the US troop are the same? You would be very hard pressed to push this particular point. And that's why I think that with this government in Damascus, Israel is concerned, which is why it's talking about helping the Kurdish separatists. US is concerned, which is why I think Barbara Leaf didn't do a press conference with Ahmed al-Shara, because she's not happy with how things are developing, and the US is waiting to see, we'll lift the bounty, but we won't lift the sanctions. And I think Erdogan is the one running around trying to say, look, I'm not doing anything against the Israelis. I'm a NATO ally. I'm your friend. Let Damascus go. Let these guys rule in Damascus. And I think that the Israelis are saying, as we saw 2 days ago, they are saying that Ahmed al-Shara is putting on a show, a display of a moderate face, but in his heart, he harbors a desire to destroy us. And they're probably right. I think the Israelis are trying to tell the Americans, and the Americans are aware of it too. But I think the Americans are saying, he's still a NATO ally. Erdogan can't do much. It's not like he's going to march on Tel Aviv tomorrow. We don't have the capacity to stay in Syria. better Erdogan than Iran. Syrians will never accept an Israeli presence in Syria. The best of the bad options we have is let Erdogan do so. And I think that's where the NATO ally comes to his advantage. Having said that, I do think that many people pay a price for Erdogan's games in this regard. And that's why I always say Erdogan is Muslim in good times and Turk in bad times. He's a heavy Turkish nationalist in bad times, and he's a very Muslim ruler in good times. But I think that overall, I think that this particular argument doesn't
But
hold.
I think that what Brother Sami Hamdi just mentioned about how U.S. sees Turkey right now in Syria might change when Donald Trump will come into power. Because Donald Trump, he already hinted that what Turkey did in Syria was an quote-unquote unfriendly takeover. This is not something that was resonated with the Biden government. Biden government, in fact, they did not come out in public criticizing anything about Turkey, what they have done in Syria, how they're now helping this new Syrian government, none of those things. So everything could change and could even fall apart. Turkey could get kicked out of from NATO under Donald Trump, or Donald Trump could actually remove United States from NATO. Who knows? I mean, what I'm trying to get you at is that something wild is going to happen, because right now they're hanging in a balance. Turkey is not going openly against United States, and United States under Biden administration, they're not going openly against Turkey yet. I don't think they will do so before the term will end officially. But when Donald Trump will come into power, he will not be somebody who would be waiting for Erdogan to make a decision first and then have him follow him. Donald Trump would want to lead Erdogan, and that's where the problem will start, because Donald Trump is a man with a lot of ego, same as Erdogan. He wants to be ahead of the game. Therefore, we might see there is going to be something happening, wild thing happening when Donald Trump comes into power, and we might see either Turkey getting kicked out of NATO, or U.S. itself removing it from NATO. Who knows? But something big is gonna change, because that's the situation or the proposition that the United States they have right now is not something acceptable by United States, especially by Donald Trump, about what Turkey is doing and their role, their influence, their involvement with Syrian government. Because if Turkey finds a peaceful environment operating in Syria under the auspices of the Syrian government, and if United States let that or allow that to happen and go on for many, many months and perhaps years, then slowly but surely this same government of Syria and with the help of Turkey will rise up against Israel. And both Erdogan and Ahmed al-Shara, the leader of the Syrian government, made it publicly abundantly clear about their intention. In fact, Ahmed al-Shara in 2016's video, he said, "We will be marching to Jerusalem." Exactly the same thing was reverberated when Turkish Nationalist Party leader said, "We will reach Jerusalem. After Damascus falls, we will go to Jerusalem, we will target and we will liberate Jerusalem." So both, what I'm trying to get you at is both Turkey and Syria, they are on the same page when it comes to liberating Jerusalem and their policies towards Israel. Something we will have to wait and find more, in the Trump era, what he will be making out, how his policy will play out for the United States and also for Turkey. I definitely want to know your opinion on this. Please do not leave any ad hominem comment attacking me for my views on any of these things. I don't support Turkey. I don't support Erdogan. I don't support anybody. I support humanity. I support Palestinian, their rights, and I want to stop the genocide if I can. That's the only reason why I'm here. Thank you guys for joining.